Before I get started, I'm going to be joined by two fabulous colleagues, two social media, social business mavens as well. I'm going to go ahead and bring them up because we're going to go back and forth as we tell this story as well, okay? So I first want to bring up Clarissa Feltz. Clarissa is from Lowe's, and she is the Vice President for Diversity, Inclusion, and Collaboration. So give her a big round of applause. And I have to tell you, if I hang out with Clarissa long enough, we're both from North Carolina, so our accents will come out. Clarissa is a true leader. I can't wait for you to hear her story. So she is absolutely fabulous. Thank you, Clarissa. And then we also have Jean Balbo. Jean is the director. I almost promoted you there. At Prudential. Did you hear that, John? And she focuses in on process. So you're going to hear about social being embedded in the process. She is a recovering compliance officer. So both of these brilliant ladies will also join me on stage as we tell our story. So thank you both for being here as well. Okay, so a couple things I wanted to go through right up front. So the first is one of my favorite lines that I tweeted, which is social is like a diet. It isn't temporary, it's a lifestyle change. So it's something that you do and that you embed in your life, and as Carol said, this is here to stay. It will be here with us for a long time. Let me give you some of the numbers. So today, I love the fact that women are using social more than men. Carol talked about this great opportunity that we shouldn't let get away from us. Women can multitask, right? They can tweet during the debate and manage what's going on. Pinterest, a brand new social tool. I don't know how many of you love it. 80% of Pinterest users are women, by the way. Pinterest drives more traffic to retail sites than Google+, which is 80% men, YouTube, and LinkedIn combined. Now, believe it or not, more companies today are actually leveraging social inside of their four walls, and you're going to hear some stories about that, using microblogging and blogs inside their organization. And there is ROI. So at IBM, I often tease that we look at ROE on every project, and ROE for us is return on everything. So we looked at, through our IBV study, 66% of the top financially ranked firms today who are doing well in business on their business bottom line leverage social in their business process. So I was a math major in undergrad. There's a statistical correlation between social and financial performance. So we actually talk about this as, Carol talks about it as the business of social media. We actually call it social business, which means that you are embedding social in every one of your business processes. So same concept. For us, that could be embedding social into your sales process, into your supply chain, into what you do to recruit new employees into the business. And a social business uses these tools and techniques to really achieve three critical things. One, it wants to become more engaging. So it wants to have a two-way dialogue. It wants input from a client. It wants its employees to speak out, like Ron talked about how we manage things at IBM. It wants to be engaging. It is transparent. And transparent means that information doesn't flow in the old hierarchy, top down. It flows top down, bottom up, side to side, diagonal, inside, outside. This is probably one of the number one concerns of most of our senior executives today, is that transparency, because it causes some to lose what they consider power, which is power of information. And then the last one is nimble. That means you're moving really quickly, really fast. You're going to make things happen. So you can start a marketing campaign in the morning at 8, and by noon, you can change things around because you know what you're doing right, you know what you're doing wrong, and you have all of that social analytics to help you change and move around. So we believe that leaders, just like Carol started, like Ron continued, Terry talked about, leaders are disrupting markets with social business. And we believe it's more than just liking something on Facebook, but it's really about leadership. And we see leaders around the world. We now have different folks doing social in almost 170 countries around the world. We believe that leaders are looking at this in two dimensions. The first is they're looking at it to activate their workforce. If you think about your company, what's the most valuable resource you have? It's your people. It's your people. And think about how millennials communicate today. Do they call you and send you email? Do they snuggle with their book like Carol? No. They're snuggling with their iPhone, right? That's what they're doing. So we've got to activate this workforce. We've got to create a smarter workforce. And then we have to continue to delight our clients. And we can leverage social to create an exceptional customer experience. Do you know today that 90% of people trust each other, word of mouth, their quote-unquote friends, and 90% of people do not trust your company website. They do not believe that you're trustworthy on that website. So when you're investing time, you want to invest time in getting your friends, your customers together to create that exceptional experience so they will speak on your behalf. So I put this up here because social is for internal and external. So you can use different features that we know and love in the external world, inside and outside, in a private, protected way. So just give you a couple of examples. You can do microblogging, what Twitter does. You can do that inside. You could also do that privately in a B2B setting or with your customers. You could have a community. So a community like you see today in Facebook. You can have a protected, secure community that you might use and leverage outside of Facebook that could connect, do social bridging as well. So as you're thinking about these examples, you're going to hear some examples inside and outside. They won't all be Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Many of them will be using tools that have security wrapped around them that are private so that innovative and new ideas come from customers and are crowdsourced, but they are protected within an organization. This is really important for a lot of different companies. Okay, so let me walk you through what I think is the funnest part. How would you get started being a social business? And we're going to do example after example after example, some live and some on Memorex, but we're going to do lots of different examples. The way that we coach companies through becoming a social business is a really nice step-by-step agenda. The first thing we look at is goals and culture. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We talk about building that trust plan. So remember, 90% of people trust their friends, and trust is the new social currency, right? So trust is the new social currency. Then we're going to talk about engagement, how you engage your audience, moving them from being a spectator to being a participant with you, how you embed that in your business process, how you design for reputation and risk manager. And I know we've got a great speaker after me that's going to dive deep on reputation, which is critical. And then we'll talk a little bit about social analytics, okay? So the first step is really about understanding what you're trying to achieve as a business, what your business goals are, but making sure that aligns with your culture. So if your culture isn't ready to accept taking input from a customer, if it's not ready to trust their employees, then you're probably not going to be successful. And my favorite saying is, culture eats strategy for lunch. So you can leave here with a fabulous strategy, but if that culture isn't aligned to what you want to accomplish, I guarantee you will fail. And I've got lots of examples of that. But we also have a great example where this has been very successful, so I'd like to bring up Jean from Prudential to tell us her story. Jean?
Thanks so much, Sandy, for inviting me to talk about Prudential's journey into social. Next to my kids and my family, it's really my very favorite topic. And you can ask anybody in Prudential because I talk on the elevators and on the lunch lines and every place. First, a little bit of history about Prudential. We've been around for over 136 years. And I think back to our founding fathers and how this discussion would seem like utter science fiction to them. But yet here we are, 136 years later, diving into all this new technology. So we have a little over 50,000 employees worldwide in 38 countries. 21,000 of those are based in the United States, and that's the group that we're really focusing on, is internal collaboration with our US-based associates right now. And my focus has been on the Law, Compliance, Business Ethics, and External Affairs Organization, otherwise known as LCBE, that has 780 associates. So our journey into social, or our social story, actually began with one sentence. And it was Susan Blount, our chief counsel, that simply stated, "I want a blog." So Sandy, when you're talking about culture, we couldn't have asked for a better start, because that whole top-down culture is what drives adoption. So to have our chief counsel be the one to say, "I want a blog," that really launched us in a very good direction. So about a year and a half ago, we decided that the law, compliance, and business ethics area was really the place to pilot this connections environment. We're a group that's made up of attorneys and compliance professionals, admittedly not the most technically savvy people in the organization, but they were the very people that we really needed to weigh in on any potential risks. So at that time, I was a compliance professional, currently recovering, and I had to come up with an adoption strategy for this group. So I sat with our technology organization, and they kind of walked me through the tools and everything. And as I'm walking through them, I started to realize that while the technology is the vehicle, the more important piece of it is adopting social behavior. So when I went back to this group as a non-technical baby boomer and said to them, "Hey, if I can do this, anybody can do it," they believed it, and then they ran with it. So what they did was start to use the tools. We rolled out to them just under a year ago. It was in December of 2011. They began using the tools the attorneys and the compliance professionals started to use the tools, and they started to evaluate our current communications policies in the company, and then also developed an intranet posting guideline that's now attached to every one of our connections pages as a resource for the rest of the organization. So what were we trying to achieve? Every year, Prudential puts out an employee opinion survey. And one of the messages that was coming through fairly consistently was that the folks in the organization really wanted to get more communication from the leadership team. And this is exactly the issue that Susan was trying to address when she said that she wanted a blog. Prior to our rollout of Connections, we would have emails that would go out from the leadership team, but she never really understood who was looking at it or what their reaction was going to be. So now we put these blogs out on Connections, and added bonus, they're interactive. Because now our associates, instead of just reading them and sort of ingesting it, can now comment on those blogs. So what we're creating now is an organization that now has unprecedented access to the leadership team. Something that we really take for granted when we're working in the headquarters building, because we all practice our 2-minute elevator speech because we want to be prepared for when the executive enters the elevator or we're on the lunch line. But for people that work even a block away, let alone 3,000 miles away, the only opportunities that they really have to interact come from the larger networking events, and it's very easy, or very difficult rather, for them to have that kind of FaceTime. So now they have basically a virtual FaceTime. So Susan has her blog now. Her entire leadership team has the blog. Our chief compliance officer actually created 2 communities, which have been great because he's got one restricted community that he speaks about strategy and initiatives and laws that are coming down the pike with his compliance leadership. And then he has a broader-based community where he can have those discussions, and they're very interactive, with the rest of the compliance organization. So our chief ethics officer puts out a regular blog. The external affairs folks have been in blog heaven because we're in the middle of a national election. So as they go off to national conventions and things, the blogs are coming back, and they're sending all kinds of information back to us about what's going on there. When you talk about our enterprise, if you asked our CEO and chairman, John Strangfeld, what his goals are, he's going to say one word: talent. He wants to be able to engage and retain talent. So, like most organizations, we have performance management, and part of our performance management program includes technical competencies. And now this year, our discussions around these technical competencies are including social in a way that they never did before. Some of the competencies that we have are collaborating to seize opportunities. That's the definition of social. So like any large organization, we've spent years building silos. So we've worked in those silos, and I have to tell you, social is smashing silos to bits. Because now our groups can work inside communities, they can collaborate across the businesses and with all of their partners around the country. Transferring strategy into action is another one of those. And this one has been a really interesting one for me because we have a community that started in LCBE because one of the main initiatives that we're talking about is expense management. So we have a community that we set up so that the members of LCBE can go in and put suggestions into forums about different ways that we can save money across the organization. So one of our associates in LCBE came in and actually suggested using connections for file sharing, because what she was doing was sending out a really large file across a really broad audience, and she came in and said, if we share it once inside the community, instead of sending it out into all of those inboxes, look at how much server space we're saving. So after that came out, my phone is ringing off the hook now because everybody wants to know how they can do it as well, because I'm their community manager and they're coming to me for guidance. So this is an example of using social to actually promote social. The external focus, when we think about external focus, you're thinking about things that might be going on outside the Prudential walls. But when we're talking about it, we're also talking about things that might be going on outside of our department. So we have business resource groups throughout Prudential that talk about things like diversity and veterans affairs. And these groups are really engaging social because now they can engage this broader audience to help them strategize about what they want to do for the coming year, and then also to plan events, because that takes a lot of work, and to be able to do it in a collaborative space is a much easier and better and more efficient way to do it. And then lastly, having a talent mindset. Again, going back to the chairman, he wants to be able to engage and retain talent. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not leveraging it, then you're really not getting the full benefit of it. So what we have now are folks going into their Prudential profiles or their connections profiles, and they're putting in some more background information, and then they're also tagging their profiles, which makes them recognizable and searchable across the organization for different expertise. Personally, I can speak that it works because when I went in and put tags on my profile about connections and community management, I'm getting calls from across the enterprise, basically asking me for guidance and help. So what's ahead? We originally rolled this out to the 780 associates. Then they told 2 friends, and then they told 2 friends. So when I look at our analytics right now, the blogs, we've put out a couple of hundred blogs and announcements just in LCBE. We've seen over 60,000 hits to those. So now we know that people are reading it. The better thing is that we've got over 600 comments, which is telling us that people are really getting engaged in these conversations and taking advantage of all that virtual FaceTime. When you look at the entire organization, keep in mind that we never really officially rolled connections out. It's been sort of growing organically through connections with the LCBE organization. So now we have about 1,600 communities that have been created, and there are over 6,000 members of these communities. These are distinct members. So we know that we went from 780 to 6,000 just on the strength of the tools. So this has been an enormous cultural shift for us. So what's ahead? Right now we're in the middle of a very big governance discussion, and then also talking more about the broader communication that's needed to get more of the enterprise engaged. So, as I said, I'm telling the story of Prudential, and most stories, traditionally, if you're telling it, ends with the end. In this particular case, I have to say, this is the beginning. I can't say that anywhere near the end. And, as a community manager that's part of this discussion, knowing that we're on the brink of the big one, as Sandy refers to it, I know that come another month or 2 from now, this is going to explode. And I absolutely can't wait to see how it plays out.
So a couple interesting things there. One, Jean is a community manager. So let me give you some interesting data. If you look at the internet, the internet created a lot of new job types, right? My husband's a webmaster. Wouldn't be a webmaster if there hadn't been an internet. There will be 5 times as many job types created by social than there were by the internet. And number 1 is community manager. The highest increase, and I don't know if it's true for Gene or not, John, but the highest increase in salary as a group category last year was community managers. On average, their salary. Okay, so culture. So we just talked about culture. There is a cultural assessment. If you're interested in this, and you should be, this is one of the critical success factors for really seeing how you can use social. There is a cultural assessment here in the presentation. You can leverage it. This is kind of a mini version. We have a longer one if you're interested. It looks at things like the way that you communicate, how you treat risk, how you reward people. And I think before you start something, or even if you've started, you should take a look at that culture and see where you want to transform, where you currently are, and what your desired state is. Okay, so we did that alignment of goals and culture, and then we're going to talk about trust for a couple of minutes. So trust is really important, right? It's what a relationship is based on, and that's what social is. Social is about a relationship with your customer, and it's about a relationship with your employees. So a couple of interesting things about trust online or socially. So did you know, and there's 5 different studies that show this, 15% of your customers influence what every one of the rest of your customers say about you, think about you, feel about you. Same is true of employees. They did this survey both inside and outside, 5 different surveys. One is from IBM, the other 4 are independent. So the great question is, who are those people, right? Who are those 15% who are talking about you on Facebook, on LinkedIn, internally? Who are those people? Really, if you think about trust, once you figure out who those people are, it's about generating trust with them. So a couple of things that drive trust. One is transparency and openness, right? You don't try to hide anything. One is around responsiveness and consistency. So stating what your service level agreement is. Quick story. I was flying in Amsterdam. There's an airline there who promises to get back to you in 15 minutes if you tweet to them an issue. 15 minutes. So I got a flight canceled, going back to New York. Saw a huge long line to rebook that flight. So I decided I would tweet. So I did. 10 minutes later, this airline called me and said, Ms. Carter, we have rebooked your flight. Go to gate 47. Have a great day. It's fabulous. So then, I travel a lot. A couple months later, I was also in Europe, flying on a US airline, and I had the same situation. Flight was canceled, huge long line. I said, well, it worked for that Amsterdam airline. Maybe it'll work for this. So I tweeted, and 6 months later, it's a true story, the airline got back to me, and here's what they said: we're working on it. So I hope that they didn't think I was still sitting in that airport in London waiting for 6 months for them to help me, because I had already moved on. So being responsive is really important. And then sharing expertise, not marketing, not doing sales. Great example here is Cemex. Cemex is a cement company, and I love to use them because a lot of companies will go, well, you don't know my company, Sandy, or we do things differently. This is a cement company. They just won Harvard's Management 2.0 award for their implementation of social. Determined the tippers, these influencers at 15%, came out with their most profitable ready-to-mix cement product from that innovation that occurred, again, in a private way, innovation that occurred leveraging their employees and their B2B customers. So this can work. Don't say it can't happen in your company. Executives are leading the way. I wanted to showcase Jenny Rometty because I'm really proud that we have a strong woman CEO, a brilliant woman CEO. She is leveraging social in every way that she possibly can, and I think it's really smart of her. This is from the CEO study. Look at this CEO study, for all of you out there who are executives, hope to be executives. This says the likelihood of trusting a CEO or a senior leader. How is it impacted by social? So if you add up the two numbers, much more likely and more likely, 82% more likely to trust a senior leader who is transparent and uses social. They're communicating with their employees and they're communicating with their customers. So to generate trust in that senior leadership team, it's really important that you and your senior leadership start to use the tools. Don't wait, don't get left behind. Last thing I wanted to talk about here is figuring out who those tippers are. Typically you need software to do that. This is something that we did with a partner of ours called DeepMile. We did this with the United Nations. The United Nations had a premise that the Egyptian crisis, the person who really had the most influence was the person with the most Twitter followers. But in reality, see, a tipper, someone who influences others, isn't necessarily the person with the most followers. So to illustrate that, we did some analysis, social analytics. The dots in the red come from a software program. And we found the person who tweeted the most about the Egyptian crisis was actually Justin Bieber. Do you guys know Justin Bieber? Okay, good, because I was just in Turkey and I had to describe who he was. It was difficult. So Justin Bieber actually was tweeting almost 4 or 5 times a day about the Egyptian crisis. He had the most followers. I don't know why he was doing it. Most followers, but wasn't the most impactful person. In fact, in the upper right-hand side, and we've removed their pictures to make sure there's no bad repercussions, only had 6,900 Twitter followers, but had the most impact, the most influence. You can see by his kind of social graph there in the marketplace. Now, this also varies by category, so Justin Bieber would be high in music, just not on Egypt. So figuring out that, I hope he's not listening to this, but figuring out this would be very important for your companies, okay? So trust plan, understanding who those are, those 15%, who are they, how do you leverage them like Cemex did, a cement company, and making sure you don't just say, well, this person has the most Facebook fans or the most Twitter fans, therefore it's that person, okay? Okay, the next area is on engagement. And this is some data you guys should all take back. I'm hoping to give you some nuggets to take back to your companies. This is from our CEO study. And I think this is fascinating. So, world's largest CEO study, 1,800 CEOs around the world. Left-hand side, percentage of CEOs who today are using social with their clients. Now, we do this study every 2 years. Last year, there were so few CEOs, we couldn't even build the chart. So it went from like 0 to 16% of CEOs today using social. Forrester, George Colony, who runs Forrester, an analyst company, predicts that in 3 years, a board will not select a CEO unless he or she has a strong digital reputation. Could potentially be clout, don't know what they're going to use, but that's the prediction in 3 years. So you can see it in the impact. Look at this. We asked the CEOs, how about you in the next 3 to 5 years? 57% said that they will be using social in the next 3 to 5 years. I know this is real because in the last 3 months, I have now mentored at least 17 CEOs. And they've called me in to do one-on-one mentoring with them, even though some of them have social teams, because they don't want their teams to know. They don't know what Facebook is, they don't know what Twitter is, and they want someone independent who's not going to rat them out to tutor them and help them. Great business opportunity. Yes, question?
Does this translate into dollars? I mean, is there a way to track what kind of sales volumes you're getting?
Yes, it's a great question. So McKinsey did a study, and McKinsey looked at embedding social in a set of business processes. So I'll just give you a couple of figures. If you embed social into sales and marketing, on average, where you embed it, your revenues increase by 15%. 15, 1-5. If you embed it into customer service, so AT&T, in fact, Carol had AT&T speak at our last session. On average, your customer sat rating increases by 20%. If you
customer service meaning like you at the airport, you were satisfied.
Yep.
So you went back again.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep. And if you leverage it in innovation, so to create a new product like we saw from Cemex, on average, your new offering, whether that's a financial offering or a physical product, is more successful by 20%. So that's why at the very beginning I said that 66% of those top of NASDAQ and top of the charts financially are leveraging social. They're seeing it in their ROI. Our own IBM CEO, Ginny Rometty, has actually invested in phase 2 for us. And she didn't do that just for fun. She did that because she's seeing the impact, the positive impact on IBM. Thank you for that question. So the right-hand side of this really goes to that point, which is where do CEOs see customers engaging? So in the next 5 years, CEOs said 73% of them said that their primary channel for engaging their customer will be social. 2 years ago, it was 1%. So it went from 1% to 73%. So this will be a tool for engagement. So engaging your clients and engaging your customers, your folks. Okay, a couple of examples I wanted to give you here real quickly. This is TD Bank. TD Bank is the 4th largest bank in North America. And this is something that they started to impact their engagement externally and internally. They created a community, and it's called the WOW community. Community to share their great customer service that they provide to somebody, to share it in a forum that they can review and reward based on great customer service. So part of their culture is always serving the client. From this, they created the legendary customer experience and the exceptional customer experience, which actually I believe this year will come with some dollars attached to it, not just a pat on the back and the award for legendary. They have 85,000 employees. 50,000 of them have posted a phenomenal customer service story. Marketing uses those stories to market. One of the stories I heard recently was that someone called into the call center. It was her birthday. She mentioned it on the phone, so the call center rep got a couple of her friends together and they sang the woman happy birthday. Woman started crying on the phone. Personal touch, right? Crying on the phone. And turns out she was one of the #1 bloggers in Canada. So she blogged about it. So the story goes that they started getting people coming into the bank to open checking accounts and savings accounts and saying, here's my birthday. Here's my birthday. So 300,000 stories, 260 added every day. 260. Can you imagine if you're in marketing, what you could do with those stories? If you're in HR, think about the morale benefits. If you're in learning or education, training tools for your new employees, I mean, wow, it's pretty incredible. Another engagement tactic is gaming. How many of you guys are gamers? Awesome. Did you know that there are more women gamers now in the United States than men? 52% of gamers in the US are women. Did you know that the average age of a gamer is 35? 35 years old. Yep, so it's not your kids, it's a lot of your customers, right? Now, the really powerful thing about gaming is it's very social, and if you play a game, you have a higher recall of what you just learned. So this is an example from us, from IBM. Our #1 marketing tactic for now the last 3 years running is a game. Believe it or not, IBM has a cool game. It's called City One. 80% of people who play it are C-suite executives. So you wondered what your folks were doing at work? They're playing my game. We have the highest closure rate because when you play the game, you want to post your score to Facebook. You have to give me your registration information. I can see how far you got in the game. I can understand what you loved about it. So gaming is another really cool way to engage people and get them interactive with you. Mobile obviously plays a big role here as well. Okay, next section I wanted to talk about real quickly is about embedding this into your process. So you heard Jean. Jean is a director of process reengineering. So this is about embedding into your business processes. So this young lady here who asked the question about revenue, does it make a difference? It does, as long as you embed it into what you're doing, your workflow. So understanding your business process and seeing how can social help me do this process better. Examples from the McKinsey study. I went through, I think, most of these numbers. HR and talent management, 15% cost reduction when you embed this into HR and talent management because it helps you find people faster. You have a higher retention of people. They're happier. I don't know if you guys saw the recent study that was done. 3 reasons why somebody will come to your company. First 2 haven't changed. Money. What is the job? Can I impact the world? Third one is, does my company allow me to use social tools? That's the way that I work. I don't work with a phone and an email. Oh my God, that's so last year. I do text, I do microblogs, I do collaboration, I do activity streams. That's what I do. Okay? So the example here I wanted to use is Clarissa from Lowe's. She has a fabulous, 2 or 3 fabulous stories that she's going to show about how they've embedded into their process. Welcome, Clarissa.
Great to be here. I'm so excited. Sandy and I have been partners for the last 3 years on this journey. And Lowe's began a journey of transformational change about 3 years ago. And I just wanted to start by asking you a quick question. How many of you have tackled a home improvement project? Great, and I hope you've all been shopping at Lowe's. But with that said, how many of you found that to be very simple? Exactly, and that's why I'm here today. That's what social has to do with Lowe's, because as we began this journey 3 years ago, we knew home improvement is not simple, but it needs to be. And it has to start with making it more simple for our employees so that they can serve you and make it more simple. So I was asked to lead an initiative called the Integrated Workforce Experience 3 years ago that was really to make an experience more simple for our employees. And one of the things, our first deliverable, was social business. And the reason we started with social business was because we have 250,000 employees in 3 countries, and we knew in order to really be successful with this transformational change, we needed to start with keeping a pulse on how things were going. And everything we knew about social really told us that that was the best way to keep a handle on how those things were going. So we started off with that. And the executives gave us a charge. They said, you have a year to really prove business value around social business. And by the way, we're not going to fund you until you prove the value. So here we go. And so we started off really trying to figure out, where did we start? So we used some open source code to begin with, and we did a test with our international sales meeting. We provided the platform to our employees around the international sales meeting. Well, quickly the dialogue changed, and during that conversation, one of our associates had an interesting opportunity. She was trying to sell Teflon-coated paint trays that were $3.98, and she'd come up with an innovative way. She poured old paint into the paint tray, let it dry, peeled it out, set it on the paint desk beside the paint tray. Well, all of a sudden, the paint trays started flying off the shelves. So she went out into this forum that we had set up for the international sales meeting and said, I have this issue. I need inventory. Please help me. Anybody out there have this $3.98 paint tray? I need more inventory because I poured old paint into the tray, pulled it out. Now I can't keep it on the shelves. Well, lo and behold, no one shared inventory, but everyone adopted her idea. So it was incredible. It tripled the sales of that particular item. And even though it was a $3.98 item, it has a margin of about $500,000 a year. So all of a sudden, we had a story to go take to the executives. It was amazing what that one story really did for us. And really proved that this can work when you embed it in the flow of work. Because what was interesting about it is she didn't go into the forum to really share her idea. She was looking for inventory. And if she had used traditional channels like email or phone, none of this would have ever happened. So that really sold our executives on the power of social. They were bought in. So it was a great way to start, and we were given permission to move forward. We went to IBM. We have a WebSphere architecture, so we looked and adopted connections. We installed it and opened it up to 250,000 employees. And Today, we have over 10,000 communities. We have over 49,000 blogs that are active. Our CEO is very, very involved, and I can tell you, I think that is one of the biggest reasons we're successful is both the CEO blogging as well as our entire leadership team really bought into it from the very beginning. Getting them to be your biggest advocates in this space is so very important, and it really does add to their credibility and their transparency. Today, when our CEO blogs, he also stays engaged in the conversation, and he comes back when employees ask really hard questions. For example, a year or so ago, we closed 20 stores, and immediately after the announcement was made via press release, our CEO posted a blog about how very gut-wrenching and difficult that decision was. And so immediately the employees, we didn't know quite what would happen, but we felt like employees would come to rally around him, and that they did. They really were. It was amazing to hear their comments about how we don't want to disappoint Robert. You know, even the employees that were in the affected stores said, I've never worked for a company like Lowe's, and I just want to make sure I can get a job in another store. Because we explained it in a way that they knew it was a business decision. It wasn't anything they'd done wrong. It's a tough environment. We had tough markets, and we had to make some tough decisions. But because we were open and transparent, the employees rallied around that decision, and it was just amazing. So it was just a great experience to have, and so I think that really is the kinds of things that we've been able to sell, the importance of social business and that transparency and trust that builds with your employees. But a couple other examples I wanted to just share with you is the first one is about iPhones. We rolled out 42,000 iPhones to our store associates beginning last year. And we rolled them out in phases. And in most cases, in most companies, we always had to have gold standards. You know, it had to be perfect before you share anything. Well, we broke all the standards, and we started sharing before it was ready to roll out. And we opened it up to everybody, not just who had the iPhones, everybody. So everybody was engaged in the conversation. It was amazing how everybody jumped in and helped us make that next rollout even more robust. We were able to overcome issues that we had along the way. And so that was really important in the success of that. The second one, part of our deliverables was a new user experience. And we've rolled out 2 phases of user experience to our employees. And again, it was a phased approach. They've helped us make those rollouts even stronger and the user experience even better. It is about users when you're designing user experience, so we really allowed them to be part of that process from the very beginning, the concept, all the way through the deployment, and still even today. So it's been amazing. And then our number one community with over 46,000 members is our MyLowe's community. Hope all of you are MyLowe's customers and have that, which will help you keep up with all your purchases that you do for your house and keep up with your reminders of when you need filters and what size you need or what paint color you have. It's a great program, but they are doing all their support. This is the hub of information for MyLowe's. They're doing all their training through there. They have videos there. It's really become the hub of activity. So the employees have really rallied around that, and it's made such a difference in terms of not just messaging them and hoping that they get the information, but letting them have a dialogue so you know when you've missed that information that you need to share, and really helping them answer each other's questions as well as share best practices. One of the things they've done with MyLowe's is some of the stores are having like vignettes where they invite customers in and they can see it. And so they're sharing pictures of what they're doing with MyLowe's to all the other associates. And so other companies, again, like the paint tray story, can adopt those best practices, and it just becomes viral, and it's so powerful. So as far as the future, we're really looking now to how do we leverage all the value that's there with over 10,000 communities and 100,000 unique users every week. We've got a lot of value out there, and we want to know how to really leverage that better and really examine the social analytics there. So that's really what's next for Lowe's. But thank you for your time today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Sandy.
Great. Thank you, Clarissa. Okay, so Clarissa gave some great examples and great stories. Let me just continue on with how you would take this back to your company and make it real. The next step would be designing for reputation and risk management. You're going to hear a session after mine on reputation management, but let me tell you that one of the big inhibitors you're going to hear is it's really too risky to do social. I was actually flying up to Canada, and I happened to be sitting beside a CEO, and we got delayed on the runway. You can tell, you probably don't want to fly with me. Flights are canceled, flights are delayed. And I'm sitting there, and finally the CEO got bored, and he turned to me and he said, "So, what do you do?" And I said, "Oh, this is great." I go, "I have my iPad here. Let me show you about social business. This is what I do." I'm halfway through, flipping through it, and he goes, "Oh, this is really interesting, but my board and I voted to opt out of social." And I had to bite my tongue because I was going to just laugh out loud. Right? How do you opt out of social? Do you send a note to all your clients and say, "Don't talk about me on Facebook, don't tweet about me, we're opting out"? Right? How does that work? So instead, I was very calm, very patient, and I pulled up a little social analytics dashboard to show him all the places his company was mentioned. And you know, sometimes you just get really lucky, have that perfect storm. Just so happened that his competitor issued a video about him 2 days before that showed up on my dashboard. So as we're sitting there, he said, "Would you excuse me for 1 minute?" And he made a call to his CMO. Did you know, because nobody knew that this video was out there because they had opted out. They had no idea. Needless to say, I made a sale that day. So some of the things that we ask, that we recommend companies to do is, you know, to have a way to listen, right? So that you are listening to things. We call this streams or rivers of information. That you're listening to what's happening about you, about your category. That you know when to respond, right? You can't respond to every time someone says something negative about you, but you have to decide, when do you respond? When do you fight back? What do you do? And then find the right response so that you know how to respond to something that happens. This to me is one of the most important things, especially as you're talking to those compliance officers or legal, is helping them see that you can manage the risk, you can't eliminate the risk, right? Manage the risk, not eliminate the risk. Okay, the last area is analytics, social analytics. And I always say that social analytics is the new black, because everybody looks better in black, right? Everybody needs social analytics. This is part of what you do to listen to what's coming in. And let me just kind of give you 4 things that we advise people to look for. The first is that you look at a comprehensive view of what's being said, not just your brand, but maybe the category that you're in, right? So if you're Heinz, you wouldn't just look at Heinz, you might look at what's being said about ketchup, what's being said about my category. Because things might change in your category that you need to know about for a brand. You want to look at affinity. Who is talking about you? And don't make assumptions. So we do work for Gatorade, which is owned by Pepsi. They had assumed with an energy drink that those in social talking about them would be athletes. But when we did the social analytics, it's actually gamers. Gamers who are drinking energy drinks to stay awake all night to play the games. So you need to not assume who's talking about you. You really need to understand who's talking about you. Sentiment, are they positive about you? Are they negative about you? And I will tell you, actually, tools are better here to judge positive or negative. We actually recently saw a research project that showed that people will disagree over 50% of the time whether a comment coming in is positive or negative. So there is software that can automate what that is. And then finally, evolving topics, which is predictive capability. What's the next trend that's going to happen? Back to that Gatorade example, we actually saw a trend of negative comments on the category. A press release was done by Michelle Obama. 17 times it said that energy drinks caused childhood obesity. So energy drinks were a problem. So what did Gatorade do in response? They produced something called G2, half the calories. And that was a predictive trend that they got in front of to take advantage of that. Seton Hall, let me give you an example from Public here real shortly. So Seton Hall's a university. Anybody go to Seton Hall in the room? Oh, you did. Okay, great. So Seton Hall wanted to increase the number of new students coming in. That's how they get their revenue, right? And they had a Facebook page, but they didn't have a lot of activity. So what we decided to do is to do some social analytics about why people were choosing to come to Seton Hall. And it was about the relationship with alumni, relationship with professors. So we actually helped them create a class of 2014 Facebook page. We applied social analytics to determine what were the potential students interested in talking about, who were they interested in talking to, and we kept adding alumni in to connect them, professors in, doing topics inside of the Facebook community based on what they were looking for. Class of 2014 is the largest matriculating class at Seton Hall ever, 23% higher year over year than any other matriculating class at the university, just by applying analytics to a Facebook page. So analytics, really, really important. Okay, so last slide, what should you do? Well, I'm hoping you're not going to just come here and kind of absorb all the great information from, great minds like Clarissa and Jean, but that you're going to take this back and you're going to continue the conversation, that you're going to be bold and you're going to get in front of someone and present an idea to do social at your company. A couple of things I'd like to invite you to, and you'll have a copy of these. We actually set up a community with NAFI and Working Mothers, to do a community for all of you here in the room so we can continue this dialogue. So we have already gotten your email IDs. We'll invite you to the community so we can continue this. So you guys may want to ask Clarissa a question or Jean a question or Carol a question, and you can do that here in a safe, protected place to get to that next level. I would ask you to take down references as you go through the day, other companies who are doing this, and bring those back as proof into your company. And if you want help, the young lady here asked about return on investment. Again, IBM is ROE, return on everything. So we can also help you and look to help you build a return on investment case as well. So I hope this was helpful today. I'm really honored to be at the first annual because I want to be here next year too with Carol and team. And I hope that you have some great nuggets that you can take back. And again, let's give a big round of applause for Clarissa and Jean as well. Thank you.